And we are back. Welcome for part two of the biological warfare problem on the STEM files, the voice of STEM talent in Black culture with Sister Dr. Christina Parks, a doctor of cellular and molecular biology. Y'all asked for part two, and we gave it to y'all with the quickness the following week. Come on, round of applause for the STEM files. We know y'all love us. We know y'all love us. We know y'all love us. Thank you so much. We love you all just as much. We're going to be talking about COVID recovery. We're going to be talking about the greater problem as a whole. We're going to be talking about some things with prevention. So make sure you strap in, like, comment, share, and tune in for more after this. Let's get it.
You believe in these false prophets, I say I bet he lying. No football, New York City Giants. Girl dad, rest in peace to Kobe Bryant. When we teaching our babies, we teach them heavy science. Heavy science. When we teaching our women, we teach them heavy science. Heavy science.
All praise to Allah. And again, as the big homie Papoose said, we teach men, women, and children heavy science. Again, this is the STEM Files, the voice of STEM talent in Black culture, your Blackest STEM platform. We are at Tariq Cardiac, at Jabrillion_engineer, and at the Chi Mechanic on Instagram. Also, make sure to follow us at the STEM Files, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We appreciate all of the response, all of the continued followership, all of the engaging in the content. We do this for y'all, and we also enjoy it as well. I am your humble co-host, Jabril Muhammad, aka Jabrillion Engineer, civilian mechanical engineer with a background and or a concentration in naval ship fluid systems and a background in material science and engineering, the study of the various material classes, how it can be utilized for several different applications. I am joined by the wonderfully beautiful. Y'all see that red tonight? The Chi Mechanic, Sister Dr. Joy. Talk to him, Queen.
Assalamu alaikum, family. I'm Sister Dr. Joy 2X, aka the Chi Mechanic, and I've been studying and practicing traditional Chinese medicine for 13 years. And in TCM, we understand that the body innately knows and desires how to heal itself. So the medicine that I offer is here to assist you in that journey like a mechanic for your vital energy. Welcome. And tonight, we are missing our third and wonderful part of our trio, Brother Tariq Muhammad, aka Tariq Cardiac. He's the Chief Operating Officer of the STEM Files parent company, Original Man Scientific. His background in biomedical sciences focuses on cardiovascular pathophysiology, which is the study of how diseases form and treated in the heart and blood vessels. And please, family, send up prayers for our dear sweet brother and his family. Thank you.
Absolutely. My brother's here in spirit and continue to work hard all the time. Family, again, before we go any further, y'all see we're color coordinated today. All right, in red. And, we want to also send a special shout out to all the mothers and really all the women. And we know particularly our sisters who are the mother of civilization, happy early Mother's Day.
That's
we
right.
taught the Nation of Islam to not get so hung up on these holidays or supposed holidays, but to honor the woman, honor our mother every day of our lives. If it's a simple call, but really with how we live our lives and how we live it in service to our fellow man. So I'm going to stop talking because just like last time when, we got that heavy science from our guests, we're going to get the same thing tonight. So without further ado, Sister Dr. Christina Parks, welcome. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Peace unto you as well. And it's an honor.
Praise be to Allah.
Go ahead, Sister Dr. Joy. Let's get it.
Listen, we got to dive in straight in because last time, we were talking about not only the biological warfare issue, but we really want to break that down for the audience. What is it? How do you treat it? What are you working on? Any kind of COVID recovery? And we also have some questions from the chat last time. So actually, can we open up with that? I would like to point that out. Okay, so last time on the chat, Jarrell Muhammad 2272 says, next interview, please ask for our friends and family that have taken the jab, what should they do now? So I feel like that's a really good starting point and segue into what we can do.
Right. So I think I need to back up and really do explain, and I can't remember, I do so many interviews, exactly what I said last time, but the spike protein is bioengineered. Right? It is bioengineered. And in fact, it actually, the genetic material that it codes for, the enzyme can actually read it backwards and form a blood clotting protein. Whether that happens in the body has not been tested because we just figured that out. So this is absolutely designed by a computer, absolutely bioengineered. They tried to convince us it wasn't. And then there was a group out of India that came out and said, this is designed, and they gave some really strong evidence because there's 4 HIV motifs in it, which again, HIV is highly inflammatory. And where they were, it would have to be engineered. And then that paper just disappeared. And so we're all, if you're a scientist, you want to support your conclusion, right? You don't want to just come out and say, we knew it was engineered, but they made it so it was really hard to go out and say that because you'd be putting your credibility on the line because they were making sure you didn't have any data to support it with. Xizing Li and Ralph Barrick at University Chapel Hill and Xizing Li at the Wuhan Institute have been working on this for more than a decade. And they engineered a spike protein that, a virus that specifically would infect human lung cells, right? They did that work as a chimeric, which means it's a kind of a Frankenstein pieced together virus. So this spike protein is not natural. It's engineered to be highly inflammatory. The more research we do on it, the worse it becomes. So it's highly inflammatory. It gets into your cells through 13 different receptors at least.
Okay.
Once it gets into your cells, it is cancer causing by a bunch of different mechanisms, at least 5, probably more. And it seems to turn cells into zombie cells. They're called senescent cells, where they don't do anything and it makes them fuse together. So this is we just had a presentation by Dr. Robin Rose, who's really on the forefront of this. She's doing amazing work, and they have done like sort of a huge literature review and found that the spike protein is causing these cells to fuse, which is really problematic in the heart. You know, muscle cells are already fused, but then when you start having them fuse in ways they're not supposed to, they can't contract in the right way. So that is bad news for the heart. But so there's these big syncytium, or these aggregates of cells that have the spike protein that aren't really doing what they're supposed to. And they're creating all sorts of inflammatory cytokines. So they're creating all sorts of inflammation, and they're doing this in the brain and all of these different tissues. When you give a medication or an herbal or something that kills these cells, they release the spike protein and they just go right into other cells. So that is super problematic. What's even more problematic is it looks like the virus actually infects bacteria as well. So it's a bacteriophage. So it's killing off our gut bacteria, and it's causing the gut bacteria to make all sorts of toxic compounds that are then causing toxicity, inflammation in the gut, causing the gut to be leaky, leaking past the gut into the bloodstream, where they're actually going to your organs, causing problems in the organs. The spike protein goes everywhere, and also going to the brain. Apparently in the brain, it's kind of destroying the blood-brain barrier, going into the brain, but then it's causing so much inflammation that the lymph system in the brain isn't draining. So you're getting all these toxins in the brain, all this inflammation in the brain, and the immune system is not clearing it out. So it's really, really, and this is whether you've had COVID. So they've had even people that have had COVID who still have the spike protein months and months later. The body is not clearing this well on its own. So what we need to do is we need to induce autophagy, which means the body's ability to destroy these aberrant cells. However, they are resistant to that. Now, as both of you probably know, and many of our listeners know, one of the best ways to induce autophagy is fasting.
Yes.
However, there were these 2 additional issues that are really, really key. And because I know some people that are really, really disciplined in their fasting, and many of them still are having some issues. You know, they may be healthier than most, but like for whatever reasons, like I always get, whether it's with regard to injection injury or this, people always come and tell me what isn't working. I tried that and it didn't work. Right. And so I think we do have to be honest, because we have to support people, and we don't want people just being quiet and struggling, being like, well, they told me this worked and it's not working for me, so I must be the only one. Because if it's not working for you, it's not working for somebody else. So remember what I said, when we induce autophagy, that's just releasing it from those cells, and then it goes into other cells. And we still have it in the gut problem. And I have some anecdotal reports that, first of all, cancer is through the roof because of the toxicity of spike protein, and because it's really deleterious to the immune system. If you got the injection, then it's really immunocompromising. So your immune system is really going to have trouble with the cancer. But inflammation is on the rise. And we know, of course, fasting helps with inflammation. But the problem is actually pulling this spike protein out of the body is not trivial, okay, because it wants to go into those other cells. So I'm going to give you a few things to do, because I don't want to just say, like one of those commercials where you're 40 minutes into it and they still haven't told you what they're supposed to tell you. But I will just say I'm going to be launching a spike detox protocol with my website, which is vi-ta.org, vita.org, and that is on my Instagram page as well. And most of my social media has that on there. And that's going to be June 11th. And what we're going to talk about is these different things that need to happen. Like we said, we need to induce autophagy. We need to bind this spike protein, pull it out of the system. And we need to prevent it from going into other cells. So I'm going to talk about a few things that can do this, but really you're going to need a concerted approach, because you're also going to have to open your detox pathway to make sure all of this is coming out. And I know that Dr. Joy is kind of really understanding a lot of what I'm saying. And so this isn't trivial. You could try to do some of it yourself, but it's really going to be a multi-layered, staged process to clear this out of your system. That said, I will say that one of the major things that can be helpful for this is ivermectin. It's anti-inflammatory. It sensitizes cancer to the immune system. It can prevent binding and entering of the spike protein into cells, right? So it can deal with a lot of these different issues. And so that's why many people who are injection injured are on it sort of chronically, just to maintain any sort of livability of life. Now, I don't recommend that people be on that chronically, but right now, as we figure this out, some people, that's the only thing that's working for them. But for many people, they may have this subclinical gut infection because it is infecting the bacteria and it's destroying your good bacteria. Dr. Sabine Hazen has found that ivermectin, vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc in the gut help to reconstitute the microbiome. And it may be because it's preventing this virus from destroying the good bacteria. Again, that's probably not something you want to be on chronically, but a course of it might be good too. And it's broadly antiviral, broadly antibacterial, sensitizes cancer. So it may help kind of clear out the system. But beyond that, being on some antivirals, right? Because this is circulating, and the injectable itself sheds and can get into your gut microbiome and infect your bacteria and infect your gut cells. It's like a pseudovirus. So there's many different ways this can come at us. So antivirals is probably something that needs to be looked into, and we're going to talk about specific ones and specific antiviral compounds that can work. Quercetin is a good one. Quercetin and zinc can be extremely antiviral. Now, I have a lot more on this, but I don't want to get way too into the weeds. I want to do some things that people have heard of, at least, to give you an idea. And quercetin in the body can actually prevent that binding of the spike protein into the cells. So that can be super helpful. You want to have more than that, more than just a one-tiered approach, because it is so toxic. You want to have as many different things as you can. Some of the things that can induce that autophagy in addition to fasting are things like resveratrol. I can never say that correctly, right? And so, but when you induce fasting, you need to make sure you have something that's binding and pulling that spike protein, especially out of the gut, and preventing it to go into other cells. So it may be really advantageous for people to take things like quercetin and some of these other things, which I'm going to go more into in my protocol, while they're fasting, right? Because if you induce autophagy and you're destroying these cells, you don't want that spike protein to just go into other cells. So I do want to, as a scientist, and you guys can really appreciate this, kind of take a step back and say, this is something we're researching. So a lot of this is theoretical. We do have studies in cells, we do have studies in animals, but this isn't something we've studied for 20 years in people. Like we're going on the theory, and this is the best we have in terms of, and it is working in people. This approach is working, but usually it's multi-tiered. You know, I know Robin Rose had 9 different compounds that she was using to prevent that spike protein from going into other cells and to also try to pull it out of the body. So what many practitioners has found is that, especially before they even start any therapy, actually having some binders in the gut can help pull out, I think, because I think it's the spike protein, but I think that infected bacteria are also making all sorts of toxic compounds. So pulling those compounds out of the gut, especially before you start inducing more autophagy, right, can help people tolerate treatment a lot better and feel less sick, because those things are really causing a lot of symptomology. Many things that people have used, some things in the short term might be something like activated charcoal, but you can only use that short term because it depletes your minerals so much. So you're going to need to use that in the morning and replete your minerals at night. So I was telling another practitioner today, and this is just sort of an anecdotal story. I was eating some salmon, and it was in one of those packages where I didn't think it needed to be refrigerated, and it did. And I had looked at it and tried to find it, and then all of a sudden I saw that, and I thought, oh my gosh, this hasn't been refrigerated for 2 days, and I just ate a bunch of it, and I'm going to die.
No.
I ran and got the activated charcoal, and I took some, and I ended up being fine, but I took some the next day too, just to make sure I pulled out whatever might have been toxic about that. And then the next morning I woke up and my arm was buzzing. Like literally buzzing. I was like, is it the EMF from my smart meter that's on my quartz, bracelets? Like, what is causing that buzzing? I started timing it. It's like in my arm. I'm like, have I been implanted with a microchip? Like,
oh no.
Finally, I talked to a friend, and he was like, maybe because you took that activated charcoal, your electrolyte balance is off. And I was like, oh yeah, duh. But I didn't think it would cause this weird buzzing, like I had some kind of microchip implant. Sure enough, I repleted with electrolytes and it went away. So I don't know. You don't want to start buzzing. So I
don't want to start buzzing. Oh, wow.
Praise be to Allah.
But getting back on track, hopefully I'm trying to lighten the mood, right, of this really serious topic.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So something like some people use like a humic or fulvic acid. Some people use zeolites. I have concerns with all of those. One of the things that I'm actually looking into is the potential for some of the polysaccharides in things like seaweeds and sea moss to actually bind and take some of these out. And so I know we had a discussion on sea moss, and I know also Brother Reza, who I did some of the science for his supplement. His supplement has bladderwrack and sea moss in it.
Right.
And I have to tell you, after I've been on it, I felt great. And some of it, I have to wonder if it's not because I've had COVID at least 4 times, right? Because I was traveling so much and everything. If it's not doing some of that in the gut, pulling out some of those bad things. So that's something we want to look into more. And if you are interested in his supplement, it's intellectualpower.net. And it's got a lot of antivirals in it too. So, and of course we know that sea moss and bladderwrack are very, very mineral. So you're remineralizing at the same time. So we're looking at using some of those methods as well. So, and then the ones to prevent it from getting into the other cells, there are a lot of different ones. I know curcumin is one. I think, what is it called? Boscielin. But a lot of these are not whole herbs that they're using. They're actually herb-derived chemicals, medications. And so I will let those practitioners do that. But the point is we need to identify some of these herbals or herb-derived molecules that can bind to the receptor binding domain of the spike protein and prevent it from entering cells. So I'm going to do a deeper dive into those, and I will present some of that information. And I will have Robin Rose actually come on and present. She has a whole product line. That will be her product line, not endorsing it, but for those who are interested in seeing exactly what's in those and what they do. But those are the things that we need to do. We've got to prevent it from we've got to destroy those cells. And when they release the spike protein, we have to prevent it from going into other cells. And then we have to have a way of pulling it out of the body.
Right.
And we've got to get it out because it's so highly inflammatory. They took brains and I think these were in mice. I can't remember because she presented a lot of data, but the brains of those exposed to spike protein were the same as those who had had dementia for quite some time.
Mm.
So this is really, really toxic. And so a lot of people are still suffering from brain fog. A lot of people, I mean, I can just tell they're inflammatory.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I do consult for a product that reduces inflammation by activating your body's own natural systems. And so we really got to reduce inflammation and get that spike protein out, regardless of whether it's just COVID or whether it was the injection. And so this really just highlights the fact that this is warfare, and your weapon is what you can do to keep your body healthy, because if you are not healthy, you cannot function and contribute to whatever we're building.
Absolutely. Sister Dr. Joy, I have a question for you. You know, on part one, I talked about how much I love when you say you're a mechanic for your vital energy.
Yes, sir.
What I've been hearing a lot from Sister Dr. Parks over this part and the last part was talking about putting the body in the best position to do what it's designed to do. Can you
Absolutely.
make a connection between what she's talking about as a cellular and molecular biologist with what you're trained in traditional or ancient Chinese medicine? In
Yes.
what ways are you helping to do the same types of things, and how is that connected, particularly maybe for something like COVID?
Praise be to Allah. Thank you for that question, Brother Jabril. So we know, and I think Dr. Parks knows this too, that there is an association among stress, hypercortisolism, systematic inflammation, and disease severity in any kind of chronicity. And so what acupuncture can do immediately is reduce that inflammation within the body by tapping directly into the nervous system. And one of the fastest ways that it can tap into the nervous system is by the NADA protocol, or 5NP as we call it. NADA is an acronym for National Acupuncture Detox Association. There are 5 points within each ear. And in the short of it, in terms of like Chinese medical speak, you have 5 different elements. There's 5 different points. So we're resetting your 5 elements into homeostasis. In Western medicine, we understand what or may not have heard of even, the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the longest nerve within your body. I like to explain it to patients as, say you're in a car wreck and you get really tensed up. We've all kind of been there, even if it's a fender bender. And that vagus nerve kind of like rings around like a towel, you know? And when you tap directly into the root of that nerve, which is behind the ear, it immediately just unfurls. And so that is going through all of your major organ systems, including the gut. So dozens of studies have really documented the effectiveness of NADA protocol. There's a lot of benefits reported by patients and healthcare providers. So it's which include improved retention in drug treatment programs, more optimistic attitudes about detoxification and recovery, reductions in cravings or anxiety for another type of protocol, fewer episodes of sleep disturbance, which, you know, a lot of times when we're stressed and we're having this, you know, to battle with this biochemical warfare, those are heightened, right? And then the reduction in need for pharmaceuticals. So that's something, when Dr. Parks was speaking on, you know, using charcoal. This was prior to Nation. While I was in school, you know, I was entering in my doctoral program phase. I was using monolaurin, which is I think it's a long chain fatty acid. That's lauric acid. Yeah. Monolaurin is also generally safe for pregnant patients. I think when you're breastfeeding, you really need to watch out for that. But it really it helps to clear the gut. It's an antimicrobial agent that fights pathogens like bacteria, viruses, yeasts. And then what I would do after that is take charcoal, activated charcoal. So I was already in this phase or thinking of, I have to clear my gut. I have to pull it out. I have to chelate my system in a certain way. So I was also juicing. I was using cilantro. I was using, what else was I using? Sea moss, absolutely. Again, what Dr. Parks was saying, to really help to rebuild those vital nutrients and minerals that were lost. Did I ever actually have COVID? If I did, it was undiagnosed or it wasn't as severe. But that really, really helped. And then we would be completely remiss if we did not mention at this point in time how to eat to live. If we're talking about prevention, if we're talking about this weapon of our natural immunity, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, by and the teachings that re-emphasize it from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, these are life-saving teachings. So I encourage everybody to go to finalcallstore.com and find books 1 and 2 and really understand. Again, there's a breakdown of what fasting can do for your body, how to fast, and how to eat, what to eat to live during these times, how to store food in your homes. So I encourage everyone to pick up these 2 wonderful books.
Awesome. Sister Dr. Joy, you have a quick question from a longtime supporter of ours, Sister Donna Muhammad. She says, I missed a word. Did you say chelate your system, Dr. Joy?
Chelating, yes.
Can you explain that?
Chelating your system. Let me think about like how to.
I can handle that one if you like.
It's like bonding. It would be like the bonding of metals, so to speak. I
Yes.
try to break this down into like digestible pieces, but bonding central metals of like atoms and particles, and then literally pulling them out. Have you guys ever seen like when we were growing up, those like Fuzzy Willy like magnetic things or whatever, those games? That to me is like chelating. You're trying to pull this heavy metal out, detoxifying heavy metals out of your body. So Dr. Parks could probably.
I mean, it's like metallurgy, in a way.
Right. Well, actually, unfortunately, Roundup, which is glyphosate, is a chelator, and they actually used to use that to clean vats out. So it chelates all the metals out of the soil, which means it doesn't have any minerals for you or the food, and it chelates it out of your gut as well. So it's super toxic because of that. But chelating can be really tricky in your body as well.
Right.
Because one of the things, like if you really know you were exposed to something really toxic and you go to the doctor, they can use something called EDTA to chelate out. But the problem is it's not going to just bind and take out what you want. It's going to take out the minerals that you need.
That's right.
And it could and chelators that are not as strong, say such as cilantro, may bind it, but it might not get all the way out of the body. It may end up like getting halfway and then releasing it into another tissue. Right. So chelating can be really tricky. And it sounds like actually some people are using metal chelators such as EDTA that are actually binding and helping with the spike protein. However, that kind of chelation is super, super tricky. And that's why, the gentler it can be and still work, the best. So usually when we talk about chelation, we're talking about metals. But because it looks like the spike protein must be charged in the same way that a metal is, and some of these other bacterial chemicals that are released can be charged. Chelating agents, some of them can bind. When you talk something about a polysaccharide, it can be generally charged, and then it can just be helpful in pulling charged garbage out of the system in general.
Yes, ma'am. And Dr. Parks, I was also using, I remember I was using chlorella as well. So I was using chlorella and cilantro to also help clean and cleanse my blood. And Sister Donna, chelating is CHELATING or chelation.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you, Sister Donna. I still remember when, I think that was you, when you came up to me asking for my autograph. I had to shoo you away. I said, ma'am, let's not do that. Come on now. Praise be. I wanted yours. Praise be to Allah. But thank you so much for your support. The little jokey joke. Family, look how quickly the time has passed. We are at the halfway point of the show. We want to get into what we like to call our commercial break, starting with the Final Call newspaper. So let's stay tapped in, family.
Now you can get the same uncompromising truth you've come to expect from the Final Call newspaper on all your connected devices. Subscribe to the Final Call digital edition today. Go to subscribe.finalcalldigital.com.
Peace. This is Naya Muhammad, a future architect. And you're watching The STEM Files.
Praise you. So a huge shout out and thank you to Sister Naya, STEM Files alumni, as well as
Praise
future
be to the Lord.
architect out of Chicago, Illinois. And this week's edition of the Final Call newspaper is volume 43, number 32, Taking a Stand. Students on America's college and university campuses continue demanding their institutions stop blindly supporting Israel and are calling for a halt to the Zionist country's genocide of the Palestinian people. The voices of young people are growing louder and stronger in the fight for human rights and justice. Y'all, we talking about it all. We talking about the jab. We talking about these protests in the state of Israel. We're talking about everything. Like here at the STEM Files, we are unapologetic about what we believe, what we know to be the truth, right? Family, be mindful of what's going on around us today. We're in a time where people are trying to silence not only free speech but logical speech, and you're getting to a point where you can't even say anything of a thought that's not, yay, Israel, or what have you, to power or in a certain public forum. So we want to just be mindful of that. Get your latest edition of the Final Call newspaper, which again is a message dedicated to the resurrection of the Black man and woman in America and the world. Physically, you can get it on where we're located, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Greensboro, Richmond, Virginia. If you want it digitally as well, you can go to finalcalldigital.com and subscribe to get it weekly to your phone, tablet, or desktop. Family, a Final Call newspaper, good news you can use. All praises due to Allah. I had a question surrounding how to eat to live, and I'm very curious about your thought process on this, Dr. Park. So, can you speak to, I'm hoping I'm using this word correctly, like the efficacy of this staple meal given to us by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad from Master Farmer Muhammad and how to eat to live, being the wholesome wheat bread, the pure milk, the navy bean soup, and its connection to fighting against this biological warfare problem. Have you done research into that? What has been your findings, and what is your thought into those three staples as a meal, particularly for the Black man here, and in connection to what we're talking about?
Right. Yeah, I do have some comments on that. I do want to take a step back though and say that the 24 hours between the meals is absolutely critical to reduce inflammation, to normalize your insulin secretion, to actually it is sort of a intermittent fasting to reduce inflammation and even start a tiny bit of autophagy in between, and to allow your system to detoxify. So that 24-hour period is super critical. And then when you are talking about this, so we know that the butyrate that's in milk, that's in butter, is really one of the critical signaling molecules in the gut. And that actually feeds on soluble fiber, which of course is present in the navy bean in large amounts as well. And so, the milk and the butyrate and the vitamin D and the vitamin A that is in milk, as well as the very lipids in it, is milk and butter are really, really key foods. And they've been kind of demonized, and many people are sensitive to them because our systems have been so screwed up by this modernization of them and the modern, what they've done to milk in terms of a lot of the pasteurizing, not just the pasteurizing, but the homogenizing and the things they've added to it, and the ultra pasteurization, the high temperatures and stuff. Mm-hmm. But moving on to the bread, we're to eat bread that is soured. And that means it's fermented, and that breaks down the most problematic protein in the bread, which is gluten. Yes. And it's a very large protein that can contribute to leaky gut and can cause thyroid problems when it leaks through into the bloodstream. So it helps break that down. But when it breaks down the bread, it's also releasing a lot of nutrients and minerals that would not otherwise been released. And niacin, which actually contributes to autophagy, is one of them. And so that helps your body to undergo autophagy, but also helps in your energy metabolism and in your body's detox as well. So liberating those key nutrients in bread, which is not done when you're just buying the store-bought stuff. They put sugar in for the yeast to eat, and they make the little bubbles in the bread. And so you're not breaking down the bread, and then they add synthetic nutrients, which a lot of times are industrial byproducts. Mm-hmm. So we really need to get back to that souring of our bread. And then with the navy bean, as I said, it actually has key phospholipids. So one of my concerns with this big, huge move toward veganisms in our culture
Come on.
is that we're not getting the key fats. They're called phospholipids that make up the cell membrane that keep it antiviral and antibacterial. And they also signal. They do a lot of anti-inflammatory signaling. And so we think that we can build our cell membranes with just anything. And that's not true. There's a specific composition that it has to be. And milk, eggs, butter, and are key sources of those. But it's interesting that almost no vegetables have those, but that the navy bean does. And so the navy bean has certain key fats that are not typically found in vegetables. So I do want to say it's really, really critical to soak your beans.
Come on now. Come on, MGT.
Any sort of seed has anti-nutrients or certain toxins. If you'll notice, like, how does a seed live over the winter, whether it's a bean or a wheat kernel? It's because it has these actual toxins in it that prevent it from being broken down or from bacteria from getting it. And so when they get wet, certain enzymes are activated that break down those toxins. And so when we soak our beans, we are reducing the presence of these anti-nutrients. And so we want to soak them and then pour off that water and add new water to make sure that they're properly soaked so that those anti-nutrients aren't in there. And so I don't really recommend, I mean, we've all done it where I got to have the soup for tonight. So we do the 1 hour boil, we do the boil for an hour and then start it again. In general, I don't recommend that. I recommend at least an overnight soak where you start seeing those little bubbles.
Right.
Yeah. And so, and of course, we know that the navy bean is really filled. It's got those soluble fibers for your microbiome. I actually know that I feel best when I have a bowl of navy bean soup, like in terms of not being hungry before I'm supposed to do the next day. It's got those complex carbohydrates. It's filled with minerals. So it's really a powerhouse of nutrition.
Absolutely. And I bear witness, y'all, just in case y'all did not know, right? So Sister Dr. Parks is like Sister Dr. Joy. These are Muslim girls trained in general civilization class right here.
Yes, sir.
So this is Elijah's class on full display right here. So when it says how to eat to live, right? From God in person. No other book on health tells you that, makes that claim. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad stood and stands on that, right? Sister is breaking down scientifically and supporting why this is the best way for us to eat in terms of frequency and in terms of actual quality and type of food. So thank you so much. And I bear witness and just, being raised on bean soup or whatever, and particularly pre and post workout, if I'm trying to do it around that, like I feel as good as I could possibly do. So all praises due to Allah. Thank you so much for breaking that down in that way. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if I touched on this last week, but I've been studying food science for about 25 years.
Yes.
So when I was very interested in how to eat to live, I'm like, well, let's see what this is saying, because there's all these different diets and all this, and then you're like, oh, I like this about this one, but this is pretty sketchy or whatever. And so when I read Eat to Live right off the bat, I was like, 85% of this is what I've spent 20 years, investigating and learning that's true. And so, when 85%, the rest, I'm like, well, if they've got 85% is consistent with what I know, then I'm just going to trust the other 50%.
Come on now. Go ahead. Go ahead. That's
it gives me more questions to ask. Well, if that's right. And there were many things where I was kind of like, well, I'm concerned about this, but I don't know if this is the case or if that is the case. And so when Eat to Live would come down on one side or the other, I'd say, okay, then I'm sure what I had previously thought. And so I really researched a lot of the biochemistry behind when he says, and a lot of times people say, well, it doesn't say that. I'm like, oh, yes, it does, because I read it with a very, very critical eye. And I don't mean critical in terms of debunking, but looking for the questions to be answered. Like, I knew what I thought and I wanted to hear what it said. And so when something was mentioned, I'm like, yep, yep, check, or isn't that interesting? I need to look more into that. Like, for instance, I did not see this in Eat to Live, and so if you have a reference page number, that'd be great. But that we're not supposed to eat mushrooms, and
That
I
has
wasn't
been something hotly debated
Yeah.
for long.
And one of the reasons might be because their cell wall is made out of chitin, which is a polysaccharide that's not really digestible by humans. And so I'm wondering if the chitin itself is sort of acting as somewhat of a toxin or something that is not beneficial in our systems. And that's the same thing that insect shells and things are made of as well.
That's a wonderful segue. I have a question actually. Have you ever heard of cordyceps or in the use of cordyceps? Because it's like a zombie fungus essentially, and we use that a lot in Chinese medicine, especially to boost strength and immunity, to improve and enhance kidney function, and also even sexual dysfunction. And so oftentimes it's used in combination. We rarely in Chinese medicine ever give just one singular herb. It's like very unheard of.
Right.
There's a combination and a formula that are beautifully constructed. And so with a cordyceps formula, those are usually targeted for the lungs and asthma and things like that. And it's almost like we also use like heavy toxic herbs if there's a very strong heavy toxin, such as like HIV, cancers, things like that. You're going to fight fire with fire essentially, and hopefully diminish that. So I just wanted to know if you had any research on cordyceps.
So honestly, I never really did much with mushrooms. I always, even before I was familiar with the nation, I was just kind of had a, and I wasn't sure why I was uncomfortable, because I know people use a lot of mushrooms. And let's, if I had a choice between mushrooms and chemotherapy, I'm going to take the mushrooms.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So there may, and there are ways that medications, but many times there are different things that do a similar thing. And so with my research into cellular biology, a lot of times I look at the mechanism that something uses, and I'll say, well, I'll maybe research what is the mechanism that cordyceps is doing this through, and can we do something that is either more palatable or more digestible or more available or whatever it is, to do the same thing. And it's also because sometimes people are sensitive to different things. So you want to be able to offer options. And so I'm not that familiar actually with mushrooms. I know that there are a lot of them that are used for all kinds of various different health promoting benefits.
Yes, ma'am. And just to clarify, it's more of a parasitic fungus.
Is it?
That
Okay,
actually grows. Yeah, it's
I'm not that familiar with it.
It's just in that same kind of category. And I'm thinking in terms of Chinese medicine, because we categorize
right. And so a fungus
herbs.
would have chitin as well. So, I mean, it's something, and I think this is where, being on the STEM files, to ask these questions and see, and we wish we had the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad here to be like, well, why is that? As a scientist, I have a lot of questions. But at the same time, I think that when we ask, it's answered. And so that is sort of gives us something to do, right? The next generation, to ask these questions, to look deeper, to find more answers, and to move forward from there.
Absolutely. I want to pull up another audience question. Very great question from Lexcellent or Lexcellent. Who is the author of Eat to Live? So it's How to Eat to Live by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the eternal leader of the Nation of Islam, from God in Person, Master Fard Muhammad. You can go to finalcall.com. I think it's just finalcall.com.
It's finalcallstore.noi.org.
Finalcallstore.noi.org. Finalcallstore.noi.org. I knew it was something more. I said finalcall.com sounds crazy. Finalcallstore.noi.org. You can purchase book 1 and book 2 and read for yourself and do your own research. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad is touted as never asking us to take what he said on face value, right? So we have student enrollment in the Nation of Islam. Well, to be a student, you must study, right? We're believers as well, but he desires that we challenge and come to find that things are true ourselves. And we see that's exactly what Sister Dr. Parks has done, and she is bearing witness in a very scientific manner while on this platform. So crazy
Do
how
we
quick
have these?
time goes.
Do we have this
We,
in the chat? In
we
the
have it up. Yes, we do. And
praise
we're
be
gonna
to Allah.
there we go, right there. So From God in Person, Master Muhammad by Elijah Muhammad, Messenger of Allah. His book 1 and book 2, How to Eat to Live. Final call store.noi.org. You are very welcome, beloved. You are very welcome. It says, quote, if we eat the proper food and eat at the proper time, the food will keep us living a long, long time. It's our God given immune system, the best defense against COVID 19. Thank you
All
so
praise
much
be
for
to
your
Allah.
question, family. And now getting into some of what Sister Dr. Parks was saying, COVID-19 practical steps for self-care, what you can do to protect yourself. We have immune boosters, so good nutrition, sun, fresh air, exercise, vitamin D3, vitamin C, quercetin, zinc. You have ivermectin, gelic sativa, black cumin seed, antiseptic gargle mouthwash. These are some of the various items that were part of the COVID-19 defense protocols that were disseminated in the Nation of Islam through the height of the pandemic. These are still very much valid and things you can do throughout your daily routine. That's www.noi, I think it was at noi.org/C19. Thank you so much, family, for that. I think I had another quick question.
I think Brother Tariq had a question actually from last time.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yes, let's go into that. Yep.
this is for, well, I'll ask one if you wanted to ask the other, but Dr. Parks, let me see. I'm sorry. There was one. I think I just lost it, brother. Here we go.
Yeah, there you go. Praise Allah.
Has there ever been a time, Dr. Parks, when you suffered from imposter syndrome as a result of the US government's attempts to silence you and your research?
So by imposter syndrome, you mean like maybe not feeling good enough to be where I'm at? Is that kind of
That's what I
that means?
understand. That's what I understand imposter syndrome to be. Unfortunately, Brother
Yeah,
Tariq is not
no.
here to explain that, but
Yeah, I don't really know. No, actually. I mean, I think for many of us who've been through degree programs, like it's like the worst thing of my life. Like it was so terrible. Like my thesis defense might have been the worst day of my life because it was supposed to be a good time and it was terrible. So, I mean, I went to University of Michigan, which is, I mean, one of the top schools in the world. And what it taught me was like, you can have knowledge without wisdom.
Come on.
Absolutely. And many of us do.
These were the brightest people in the world doing the highest cutting edge science in the world. And there was such a lack of wisdom and the culture was so life sucking. And I was like, this is not where it's at. But I mean, at the same time, the rigor, teaches you at least, academically, intellectually, the caliber of people I was working with. I don't have any doubts about my capability and that what I was saying was correct. I knew my stuff. I know it now. So I don't have any doubts on that aspect. So I never had any sort of imposter syndrome. I knew that, in fact, I was giving presentations and rallies and stuff locally. And someone was like, I can promote you nationally. I was like, I don't want your promotion. If God wants me lifted, he will lift me in his time.
Go ahead.
Come on, sis, let's go.
Because if we try to do it in our own time, I'm here to serve.
Yes.
And I'm not here to self-promote. He will put me where he wants to be. I don't want to put myself anywhere he hasn't put me. That's just dangerous. That's just stupidity.
That's right. I want to say, Sister Dr. Parks, Brother Tariq also co-signed and agreed with your assessment of the chitin with the mushroom. I can't remember if there is or a page detailing not eating mushroom and why, but that he also talked about parasitic growth lending itself to nutritional content and or lack thereof. So that was the question I had. So one thing I used to do, it's so funny. So I used to do a little network marketing for a little bit of time, and one of the things that I sold as far as products was a very really high quality vitamin line. And one of the things that we learned, and I still stand true to this day, we talked about bioavailability. And what I don't like, and this is just with my minimal knowledge in healthcare and supplementation of that nature, the way health seems to be done or understood today is people say, well, this food or this thing is high in this, so it's good for me. This thing is low in this, so it's not. Can you speak to, particularly as it pertains to biological warfare, how a misunderstanding of things like bioavailability and judging foods simply based on the amount of a vitamin or mineral can be detrimental to health long term?
Well, and that's things like, first of all, I believe in Eat to Live, or I believe the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said just about everything has toxins in it.
Absolutely.
And that's why we need to give our body time to remove those toxins. And the other thing is the vitamin or mineral content of something isn't really as important as what you can actually absorb. So one of the things, like, people are eating like these salads or kale without any fat in it, and they think because kale is really high in vitamins and minerals that they're doing this great thing, but it's actually not bioavailable, and many greens have no bioavailability without fat. So you're not going to get fat soluble vitamins. They're not going to be soluble in anything unless you've got some fat there. So people, the fat has been demonized, and so we need to have fats to actually be able to absorb many of the vitamins that are in food. And our gut bacteria often break down and release, just like I talked about in the bread, the vitamins that are present in food. So what we think we're doing and what's actually happening are two different things. And one of the things that being at a high level of science really taught me is that everything we have is a model of reality. It isn't reality at all. Reality is way beyond our ability to intellectually visualize, even though we keep trying to. And so in order to understand it, we make a model and then we test that model. It is just a model. For instance, quantum mechanics and Einsteinian theory of relativity, both are useful in developing technology, but they're both models and they don't actually mesh. They're different. And so some people are trying to use string theory to put them together, but that's beside the point. The point is that everything you have is a model, and people think that there's somebody really smart out there that has all the answers. Now, when we ask a question, I do believe it's answered. So we should ask and we should find answers. But at the same time, there is still a wild, wild west out there of things to find out. And there's so little we know. I know that our research into water, which is a whole nother episode I can come in on, has just begun. There's so many mind-blowing things that are going on with water, and we think we already knew it. And because people just aren't even asking the right questions. So I would just say that we've taken the model that's been given us and we think it's the truth or reality or facts. And it depends on what you ask and how you ask it, what answer you get. And so we really have to be open to how very little we actually know.
What's the scripture that says if we took all of wisdom of this world or whatever, put it on the head of a pin, it would have so much room to move? I'm paraphrasing horribly, but we get the gist. One thing, and people listening can take it or leave it. We're taught and we understand that God in person, Master Father Muhammad, still studies. The picture that we are given of him is of him studying, it's of him reading as a model, as a sign for what we're to do to achieve a level of human potential beyond what we're given right now. So challenging, asking questions, right? Orienting our mind in actual facts allows us to be successful in a environment and a reality that is literally tethered and grounded in that which can be proven. So we may not at any given time understand everything, but as long as we are grounded in facts or what is actual fact at that time, we can move forward on a strong foundation and literally pull ourselves up to godhood. Whole nother show, whole nother conversation. All right. But with that, in these last 5 minutes, good Lord, this is crazy. Thank you, Sister Dr. Parks, for everything. All praises due to Allah. We're not yet done, but at this time, Sister Dr. Joy, I'll give you the honors of dedicating tonight's show. Go ahead. You have the floor, sis.
Oh my goodness, all praise is due to Allah. Family, this Saturday, May 11th, marks the 91st birth anniversary of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. All praise is due to
All
Allah.
praise to Allah. All praise to Allah. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So we want to just remember, family, that we're talking about a man who has given his life in service to the black men and women of America and the world, and really the world, regardless of how you see him, view him, think of him. Be careful how you push this man around in your head, because he's done more for you than you really understand, and his love for you extends beyond that which you can even comprehend. So I'm
Come on.
thankful for my actual life, because I literally don't know if I would be alive if it was not for him. Not because I was doing something illicit, but because I'm what they call a nation baby. So I'm not sure if I'm born if it's not for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So I
Yes,
literally owe my
yes.
life to him. That's for Muhammad, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I'm thankful to be in service to a man who has given his life in the cause of freedom, justice, and equality. So for
Praise be to
those
Allah.
interested and able, let's take some time this Saturday to do something of service. This is a holy day in the Nation of Islam, and we
That's right.
charge everyone, do something, serve your community in some way, shape, or form. Doesn't have to be all the same thing. We don't have to be uniform to be united, right? So we can do a number of different things this weekend to show our appreciation, not just for a man, but for our fellow man. All praises to Allah. So thank you, Dr. Joy. Um, uh, Sister Dr. Parks, this is your platform. We'd like you to close us out. Any last minute remarks? Anything you'd like to leave us with? You want to give a sneak peek into part 3? Oh, anything you would like to do? The floor is yours. Please, sister, just share with us whatever you like to our audience and us to know.
I just like to reiterate that, we do need to support our bodies, but we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And I do believe our intuition is actually information that we're receiving, from God, from our own souls that tell us what we need. They said there was some orangutan or something that made its own medicine or something, because
Oh, I saw that.
intuitively we know. And so it's really important, one, to detox your body so that information, which is energy, just like your phone can't receive energy if you put it under a bunch of cinder blocks, you can't receive energy when you're filled with toxins. So to detox, to trust your intuition, and to know that when you are asked, you are going to be led to the answer. So there's hope during even these dark times.
Praise be to Allah.
Wow. Well, this is Dr. Joy. Anything else you'd like to share, Queen?
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thank you so much again, Dr. Parks, for part 2. Inshallah, yes, there might be a part 3 with you
Eat to
at
live.
some point. How to eat to live, anything on, like water, we can go there.
Oh,
Quantum,
water.
quantum physics, girl, come on, let's talk about it. Yes, ma'am. But thank you again so much for your research, for your strength, for your integrity with the science and the mind and spirit that Allah has gifted you. Thank you so much for being a part of the nation. And yes, ma'am. Can't wait to have you back.
Yeah, and thank you guys. We're gonna have to chat sometime. I just love finding a group of scientists, because the way that we think is just inspires my curiosity.
Right. I was just gonna say, remain curious. That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest takeaway.
Curious. Sister Dr. Joy, I'm thinking of so much apparel right now. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I have so, but I already have the title. So, The Way of Water, with special guest Dr. Christina Parks. Listen,
come on.
That's for free. That's for free. All right. praise be to Allah. We're going to get with Brother Tariq behind the scenes on that. Family, thank y'all so much. Again, this is your brilliant engineer, key mechanic, Tariq Cardiac, Sister Dr. Christina Parks at the STEM Files, the voice of STEM talent in Black culture. Follow us at Tariq Cardiac, at @JaBrilliant_engineer, and at the Key Mechanic on Instagram, as well as at the STEM Files, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Make sure to go to the link in our Instagram bio, to go to the link in the description here, to go to our information on Facebook, and subscribe to our newsletter, family.
Yes,
That's where we're
yes.
going to be releasing like so much content. You're going to have information on in-person and virtual events. You're going to have exclusive interviews. We're going to have some merchandise as well. So much that you can just tap into with us there and just learn a bit more about us, and also just become part of our TSF community. We really appreciate you all so much, and pray that you do not just internalize that we're Black in STEM, but you really internalize and understand that Black is STEM. It always has been, always will be. Family, the STEM files of Voices and Talent in Black culture. Until next time, family. Assalamu alaikum. Peace to you all. Love you.
You believe in these false prophets, I say I bet he lying. No football, New York City Giants. Girl dad, rest in peace to Kobe Bryant. When we teaching our babies, we teach them heavy science. Heavy science. Heavy science. When we teaching our women, we teach them heavy science. Heavy science. Heavy science.